Let me paint you a picture. You owe money, a lot of money, and you have nothing. Your bank account is a desert, your wallet is a rumor. When the phone rings, it is never good news. And it is always the same voice, asking the same question, when are you going to pay? So what actually happens to you? Do men in suits break down your door? Do you go to prison? Does your name get carved into some giant book of shame? The real answer is stranger, darker, and honestly, a lot funnier than you think. Let us start with the good news. Because there is some. In most of the modern world, you cannot be thrown in prison simply for owing money on a credit card, a medical bill, or a personal loan. In the United States, debtors' prisons were banned by federal law back in 1833. So if a collector ever tells you the police are coming to arrest you over an old credit card, they are lying, and they are actually breaking the law by saying it. Here is the second piece of good news. And it comes with the best nickname in all of finance. If you own nothing, and earn almost nothing, you become what lawyers call judgment-proof. Doesn't that sound powerful? It sounds like a superpower. And in a strange way, it is one. Because here is the thing about debt, a company can sue you. A judge can bang the gavel. The court can officially declare, yes, this person absolutely owes the money. And then everyone turns to look at you, and you have nothing. No savings to seize. No house to take. No paycheck to grab. There is an old saying for this. You cannot get blood from a stone. And if you are the stone, the law more or less shrugs and walks away. Certain income is protected too. In many cases, money like Social Security benefits simply cannot be taken to pay off ordinary debt. So a person can be flat broke, owe a fortune on paper, and still be untouchable. Poor enough to be bulletproof. But do not celebrate too early. Because if you do have something, the polite legal machine wakes up, and it is very patient. First, the collector has to actually take you to court and win. Only then can they come for your paycheck. This is called wage garnishment, and it is exactly as fun as it sounds. Under federal law, they can generally take up to 25% of your take-home pay, straight off the top, before the money ever touches your hands. They can put a lien on your house, which is a fancy way of saying, if you ever sell it, they get paid first. They can freeze your bank account. And here is the cruel little twist. While all of this is happening, interest keeps growing. Court costs pile on. Lawyer fees stack up, so you can start out owing one amount, and by the end, pay back far, far more. The debt does not just sit there, it breeds. Now, you might be thinking, fine, I will just wait it out. Every debt has a statute of limitations, a deadline after which they can no longer sue me. And that is true. For most everyday debt, if enough time passes and they never took you to court, that legal window closes, and they lose the right to sue. But there are monsters that never sleep. Federal student loans, for example, have no statute of limitations. None. The government can chase that debt for years, for decades. It can garnish your wages when your hair has gone gray. There is no finish line. It just follows you, quietly, like a very boring ghost. So that is the modern world. Annoying, stressful, but rarely a prison cell. Now let me take you back in time, because we used to handle this very, very differently. Welcome to the debtor's prison. For hundreds of years in England, if you could not pay what you owed, they simply locked you up, which, if you think about it for even 1 second, makes absolutely no sense. How is a man supposed to earn money to repay his debt while sitting in a cell? He cannot. That was sort of the point, and also the madness. And this was not rare. At its peak, some 10,000 people were thrown into English prisons for debt every single year. At times, more than half of everyone behind bars was in there over money. But here is the part that sounds like a joke, except it is completely real. The prisons charged you rent. To be in prison, you had to pay for your food. You had to pay for your lodging. There were even fees for the guards to take the chains off your body. So people who scraped together enough to repay their original debt were then kept locked up anyway, because now they owed money for the privilege of having been in prison. It was a trap wearing the costume of justice. If you were rich, prison was almost a resort. In the 1700s, wealthier debtors could pay for access to a bar, a shop, even a restaurant inside the prison walls, and stroll out during the day to earn money. Meanwhile, the poor were crammed, dozens at a time, into tiny rooms, sometimes for years, over the smallest of debts. And how long could you be stuck there? When one infamous prison, the Fleet, finally closed its doors, they discovered 2 men who had been locked inside for 30 years. 30 years, over money. But the fact that haunts me most is this one. Because debts did not pass down to your children, some men chose to stay in prison for the rest of their lives on purpose. They sacrificed their own freedom, forever, so that when they died, their debt would die with them, and their children would walk free. That is not a finance fact. That is a father, sitting in a cell, giving up his entire life, so his kids could start theirs with nothing hanging over them. England finally ended imprisonment for debt in 1869, which feels like a happy ending, except the idea never fully died. It just changed clothes. Because in America today, there is a quiet loophole. You cannot be jailed for the debt itself, but you can be jailed for failing to pay court fines and fees. A traffic ticket you could not afford. A small violation. The fee grows, you miss a payment, a judge issues a warrant, and suddenly a poor person is sitting in a jail cell, not for a crime, but for being too poor to pay for a minor one. Between 2005 and 2018, courts in Texas alone jailed people for failure to pay around 38,000 times a year. Across the country, unpaid court debt adds up to more than $26 billion. The debtor's prison did not vanish, it just learned to hide. And in some parts of the world, it never even bothered to hide. In places like the United Arab Emirates, unpaid debt has long been treated as something close to a crime. During the financial crash of 2008 and 2009, so many people feared ending up in a desert jail cell over their credit cards that reporters estimated around 2,500 people a month were secretly fleeing Dubai. They would drive to the airport, leave the car keys in the ignition, and simply disappear, abandoning their lives to escape their debt. So after all of this, history, prisons, garnishment, ghosts, let me leave you with the strangest truth of all. The one that flips the whole thing upside down. There is a famous saying, if you owe the bank $100, that is your problem. But if you owe the bank $100 million, that is the bank's problem. Think about what that really means. When you owe a little, you are at their mercy. But when you owe an enormous amount, something flips. Suddenly the bank needs you to survive. They need you to keep going, keep earning, keep paying something, because if you collapse, they lose everything. The tiny debtor gets crushed. The gigantic debtor gets negotiated with. The system was never really about right and wrong. It was about leverage. And maybe that is the saddest and most human part of this whole story. Because behind every unpaid debt is not a number. It is a person lying awake at 2 in the morning, doing math that never adds up, feeling like the amount they owe is the exact measure of their worth as a human being. But it is not. A balance sheet is not a soul. The medieval father in that cell knew it. He gave up everything. And he still had the most valuable thing there is. People who loved him. Debt can take your money. It can take your paycheck, your house, in the worst places even your freedom. But it cannot take the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of the next honest step forward. And in the end, that is the one thing no collector, no court, and no prison has ever figured out how to seize.